having that person then call you, or becoming more, quote, psychic or weird, or, you say things like, oh, they know what I'm thinking. Generally, in a relationship that becomes a spiritual partnership, you can begin to know how people are thinking. You can begin to have a knowing in areas where other people have doubt. Like the phone will ring and you know who it is, and you'll just absolutely know, and sure enough it'll... Or you're thinking about your sister and you haven't talked to her in 5 years, and you're really thinking about her or whatever, and then the phone will ring and it'll be her, and you go, wow, gee, that's so weird. Now, there's nobody in this room that hasn't had those experiences on a regular basis, but you always attribute them to chaos, coincidence, to weirdness, But you see, there's a new book called Chaos, and in there, the scientists are discovering that there's order in chaos. That what we think of as chaos and coincidence, that when you study it at the subatomic level, it's all perfect. It's all connected. And then you'll be thinking to yourself, gee, I'd really like to get my screen doors repaired, but I don't know who to get. And you'll be driving along the freeway, and there'll be a truck there right next to you with a panel on it that say, we will repair your screen doors. And you go, wow. And you get off the freeway, and they get off too, And then you go over there, and they're over there, and they say, our phone number is, and it's the same as yours, but except for one number, or something strange like that. And that person comes in and repairs your screen doors and buys you a lottery ticket, and you make $4 million. I don't know, any number of things that can happen there, are all in this serendipitous category called miracles. It's just too strange to believe. And the irony is that as you become more conscious, as you begin to trust in this inner intelligence that cannot be spelled or written in any particular way, that defies description. They say the Tao that can be described is not the Tao. As you become more in tune with this part of yourself, these kinds of circumstances and events and things begin to show up more and more and more, and you get more and more powerful until you get to a point where you begin to know that anything that I can get into my imagination and hang there and have there and keep it there, I can create through my mind, including my ability, as long as I'm on love and at ease, including improving my wealth, including improving my health and healing myself of what I thought was incurable. And the fourth way to get strawberry ice cream is to have the thought, I'd really like to have some strawberry ice cream. And you manifest it. From nothingness. Just like you've manifested everything else in your life. For when you believe in yourself, you trust in the wisdom that created you. What you really want to do in order to begin to manifest these miracles in your life, become your own miracle worker, if you will, is have to understand that miracles begin in the mind. And so you want to create a new mindset. In addition to becoming a new being, that is a spiritual being, you also want to become a spiritual being with a new mindset. The mindset that you have cultivated from the time that you began to walk and talk and listen and perceive is one based upon limitations. It's one based upon there are only so many things you can do and only so far you can go, and all of the kind of lies that we talked about earlier, the distortions. Now this mindset has certain kinds of qualities to it, and I want to describe several of those qualities of this new mindset. The first one is that in your mind, you want to begin to create what I call a real magic zone, and just to begin to apply it in small steps each day. So once you begin to suspend your disbelief, you start shedding this skepticism, and the non-physical aspect of your life begins to take over. And you begin setting your mind on miracle working. So you make this a very private part of your life. This is not something that you go public with necessarily. You reserve a small piece of your consciousness, call it your corner of freedom, if you will. And you keep this exclusively for the purpose of testing yourself in this real magic zone. I've been able to manifest what constitutes miracles for myself by just having this private zone that I don't share with anyone. It's just my own little private thing, and I see wonderful little miracles cropping up all the time in my life, and it's just wonderful little ahas. A simple little thing like yesterday when my wife and I were taking a plane trip together, and because she had decided to accompany me on a trip, I had to call my travel agent, and he had to arrange a seat for her just at the last minute, and our seats weren't together. She was sitting in one part of the plane, I was sitting in another part of the plane, and it was a full flight. And when I got up to the desk where they were to do this, I said, possibility that we could get, I know this is a full flight, but is there any possibility that we could get our seat together? And I had already seen her sitting next to me on the flight, and it was a long flight. So he said, well, this is a flight, but I said, well, I'm in 17B. And he said, isn't that interesting? He said, the person here just before you was in 17A, and they wanted their seat changed, so 17A is open. Now, to most people, they just say, well, that's a little coincidence, but that's part of my real magic zone. That's something that I really feel I had a part in creating. And my wife looked at me with that knowing look, because we do this all the time, and there we had two seats together, whereas we would have had to sit at different parts of the plane. And just before that, on all the events that had to take place, that in order to make that seat available at that instant. Not gigantic, it's not lights pouring out of me and healing my leg, but it's a tiny little thing that you begin to see surfacing over and over and over again. That real magic zone is reserved for questions like, how can I change something in my life? And this will never fail you. I recommend that you reserve your own little invisible and formless, private little mind zone. Treat it as a corner of freedom. Retreat there often. Ask for the loving assistance and guidance that is available to you. That's the first thing in developing this new miracle mindset. Create that zone in your consciousness. The second thing in developing this new mindset as the spiritual being is just to affirm yourself as a no-limit being. Many of you know me as a person who created a tape series called How to Be a No-Limit Person. It was the very first product I ever created for Nightingale Conant. And I don't need to go into all the details of what it means to be a no-limit person. But the distinction here in this mindset is to know that all limits exist in the physical world. And even those are things that you ought to really be challenging. There are no limits in the invisible world. And that's where we are now. We're talking about a mindset. In your mind, everything is formless. Everything is without dimensions. If it has no dimensions, if it has no lines, if it has no boundaries, then there is nothing to tie it in. There's nothing to limit it. Affirm yourself as a person, even if you want to hang on to your beliefs, that you have limitations in your physical body, since it was born in a night to perish in a night. And there are many things that it can and can't do that you've convinced yourself of. If you want to hang on to that, no problem. But know that in this corner of freedom, in this invisible magic zone of real magic, there are no limits to what you can conceive of in your mind. Affirm that. Keep that uppermost in your mind. The third ingredient of this miracle mindset, which is the precursor to the application of manifesting miracles in your life. New mind first. You have to work on your mental images first. You've got to develop an entirely new mindset toward the concept of intuition. You've got to become comfortable with the idea that those strong inner pleadings and those sudden hunches are truly inner voices offering you guidance. And I've talked at length about that in this program. I'll give you a perfect example of how intuition saved my life and the life of my family. Many years ago, I was driving on a spring vacation. My wife was driving the car. We were driving between Atlanta, Georgia, and Panama City, Florida. And it was on a 2-lane highway. I had driven 5 or 6 hours, and I had decided to go to sleep on the front seat of the car next to my wife, who was driving a Dodge Dart. my daughter, Tracy, and her